we're starting a bit of a recap on timber frame. We're going to begin with the timber frame panel. So when you're starting any timber frame drawing, we always start by drawing the timber stud, which is the basic part of any drawing. What you have is a head plate right across the top. So one piece of timber running right the length of the timber frame panel. You've got a sole plate, which is another piece of timber running right along the bottom of the timber frame panel. And then you've got your timber studs, these vertical timbers running up here. That's the basic part of it. In between the studs, you'll have insulation. And on the outsides of the studs, you've got plywood. That's the structural part, so it's to stop it moving and twisting. And then on the very outside of the timber, on the outside of the plywood, you have this breather membrane, and that stops any wind and rain getting in. And that's the basic part of the timber frame panel. The size will always be specified. So if they tell you that the timber frame panel is going to be 200 by 50 millimeter timber used, it means the width of all the timber is 200 millimeter and the thickness is going to be 50 millimeter. So that automatically means if we're drawing the head plate and the sole plate in, it's going to be 50 mil or 5 mil thick on this drawing, because it's scale of 1 to 10. So the basic parts of the panel are the head plate, the sole plate and the timber stud, and that's the three of those in. They sometimes might specify a double head plate. What that means is just two of these. In other words, another 5 millimeters. And you draw the same again. So that would be a double head plate. If they don't specify double head plate, you just draw one of those rectangles in. That is our basic outline for the timber frame panel. Inside it, we'd have insulation. When we're putting in insulation, it's just a matter of drawing it with a little bit of yellow. And again, to show it's PIR insulation, you put in the 45 degree lines. So anytime we're using insulation, basically anywhere in the house, it's PIR insulation, which is rigid insulation. So we've got our 45 degree lines put in. Plywood is always 18 millimeters thick, so it'll be only 1.8, in other words roughly 2 millimeters on the drawing. So when I come along, I've got a thin layer of plywood, 18 mil thick. Plywood is in. And on the outside of that, the blue breather membrane that we had is nailed on. So just a blue line to show our breather membrane. Use a colouring pencil instead of a biro. And that's our layers. This is the outside of the house. This is the inside. Inside, there's always going to be a surface cavity. They might say it's a 50 millimeter surface cavity, 60 millimeter surface cavity. It doesn't matter. All that means is that, for example, if they specified a 60 millimeter surface cavity, I need to measure out 6 millimeters. And it means there's going to be a gap of 6 millimeters between the timber stud and the plasterboard. Plasterboard in real life is 12 millimeters thick, which means it's only 1.2 millimeters. So it's just over a millimeter when you draw it. And there's our plasterboard. To make the surface cavity, we need timber. If they said a 60 millimeter surface cavity, it means you're drawing 60 by 60 timber. So all I'm going to do is draw battens in on it, 6 by 6. So just measure up 6 mil. So here's my batten on the bottom. And a batten on the top. And again 6 millimeters. And the rest of the battens need to be put in at 600 millimeter centers. So that means I measure 60 mil between the battens. So I'll go 60, 120. And it doesn't matter if this gap down here is less. And again, those two 6 by 6. Last part then, to stop any air loss, we need an airtight membrane. The airtight membrane is on the inside of the panel. So you've got breather membrane on the outside of the panel, airtight membrane on the inside of the panel. That is your basic panel drawing. We've got our basic panel drawn in, and on any timber frame building, the internal part, the internal leaf, is the exact same. So the panel that we drew out, you can see it here. You've got two options then for the external leaf or the outer leaf. We can put blockwork in, which we're more used of, or else we have our timber frame cladding. Block leaf will look something like this. So again, all the stuff on the inside is exactly the same. Doesn't matter which type you have outside, block or timber cladding. So all that happens is you do the timber frame and you come along and put a skin of blockwork on the outside. The other option is cladding. So this is cedar cladding, and again it's just vertical boards nailed onto timbers. Those are your two main options. We'll go through drawing both of them.